Hello, namaste. Welcome to the B Plus channel. B Plus means be positive. Be positive is the A plus way to be. Be positive is the A plus way to be. With that intention, we're accumulating like-minded people who are looking towards tomorrow with a positive hope that we're going to be entering into a world that's going to be better for all of us. With that intention, we gather around with positive mindsets to generate an energy that's going to guide us to resolve either personal problems that we are facing or a situation that's much bigger than us, which is a pandemic. Daily from 8 to 9 Central Time, we sit together on this YouTube channel to discuss through various topics to generate that positive energy, to that optimism, that sense of hope towards the future that's going to come along for us. And today is a special day where we're going to be gathered with an eclectic panel of doctors that are going to be speaking to us with specific knowledge on certain topics around the situation that we're facing. The world that we saw at the beginning of this year is not the same anymore. And we have seen this pandemic much to grow in size, to create dangers that the humanity haven't seen before ever. And that means the scientific community, that the doctors community are faced with a challenge that they have never seen before. Yet they have risen to the challenge of the situation and helping humanity like never before as well. As part of the Doctors Panel series, we have had multiple sessions on various issues, various dimensions of the issue we're dealing with. And last time when we had the Doctors Panel, we specifically spoke about where the scientific community is, where the world is with respect to vaccines. And today we're going to be having a special topic that is very relevant to the current times we're in. Before we start on the topic, just like we do every time, I'm going to say a word about today is another special day as well. It's called International Youth Day. And there is never a time that's better than to think about the world that is going to be available for the younger generation. What kind of a world we're going to be leaving for them. And this is an opportunity for us where we're forced into a situation where we need to think about various things that we've been dealing with, how we've been dealing with, especially when it comes to the kind of world that we're going to leave for the next generation. On International Youth Day, perhaps is an opportunity for us to think about things that we should be doing, where the world that's going to be coming together for us, it's going to be something that is that our youth can take it forward, something that they are going to shape for us in future, or the way we're going to leave it to them is something they would take it forward and create a better future for the generation that are going to come along. So on International Youth Day, let us take the spirit that our youth portrays for us, where their energy, their thinking for the world that is better than it was for the years that we have seen. Let's take the positivity that comes from our youthful generations and create it for ourselves and create a better world for ourselves today and for them for tomorrow. So with that, I'm going to invite the elite doctors panel today. Hello, welcome. Namaste, welcome to the doctors panel. And as we do with every one of these programs, we sit together, we are here in a safe environment. Of course, many of you are risking as well. You represent the heroes that are fighting in the front lines for the rest of the world to keep us safe. So what I do as part of these B Plus programs every day is to clap for the safety of all of those heroes that are fighting for us. So let's represent your class and clap for all of them before we start the program today. So with that, I'm going to introduce the panel today. We have a very elite class of doctors that are going to specifically guide us in certain aspects of the situation that we are facing. We have Dr. Sarah Adams, who is an assistant professor at University of North Carolina. She's been in the field of pediatrics for many years, for 20 plus years, and she's going to offer us certain dimensions, certain aspects of how to deal with this pandemic with respect to kids. And she has medical education from Oxford University with pediatric training from the University of Louisville, and she's a board certified in general pediatrics and pediatric hospital medicine and lactation consultancy. And she's currently the assistant professor, like I said, in pediatrics at the University of North Carolina. Dr. Sarah Adams, welcome to the panel today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And then we have another professional from the field of pediatrics. She's a senior consultant pediatrician at Apollo Hospitals in Hyderabad, India. She's been having like 17 plus years experience managing newborns and pediatric patients in emergency and outpatient care. And she's been on this panel multiple times, and she's again here today to share her wisdom. And then we have Dr. Raghu Nandan from Kuwait, who is in family medicine for multiple years. And he's been on in fact, he's helped start the doctors panel on this channel. So he's been part of this from the day one. Dr. Raghu, welcome. And thank you, Dr. Sharmila. Thank you for joining and welcome. And then we have another very special doctor today as part of the panel. So one of the situations that we are dealing with right now is what is the scientific community is doing with respect to vaccines. The whole humanity is looking towards this particular aspect of scientists that are helping us and see what's going on there. I mean, that's the ray of hope for us in terms of finding out the vaccines that are going to fight this pandemic. And we have Dr. C. Prabhakar Reddy, Dr. C.P. Reddy, who is directly working. He's a clinician, clinical pharmacologist, assistant professor at Nizam Institute of Medical Sciences, NIMS in Hyderabad. He is actually directly working with the vaccine that India is spearheading right now. So he's going to offer us the direct information with respect to what's happening in the world of vaccines. And with that said, Dr. C.P. Reddy, sir, thank you for joining for the second time on the panel. I know you are busy. You are actually working directly right now at the hospital on the clinical trials. So I thank you for dedicating your time to SET. And then those who are watching on YouTube, please do share the link, because the information that we're going to share today is coming directly from the experts. So the topic is going to be on vaccines, and the other topic is around US, specifically in America, where it's a back to school season. There is debate about whether to go back to schools or not. What are the safety measures? And then there is a lot of questions around is COVID-19 impacting our kids or not? What kind of impact it has, and how do we even talk to our kids about the pandemic and the situation around it? So we have the panel of experts to talk about the topic today. So with the interest of time, Dr. C.P. Reddy, so he is very busy currently working on the vaccine situation. So I'm going to have him go first. And then what we can do is each of the panelists can chime in with the vaccine information as you would see fit with respect to that topic. So with that said, sir, Dr. C.P. Reddy, I'm going to turn the stage over to you. So please give us directly what's going on with what you're dealing with, and also in general in the field of vaccines, what's going
on. Thank you first for inviting me to this very good topic. And as you said, I might be leaving. Sorry, I'll be staying until the end, because this is most important topic, because at present, this generation, which is going into at the child age, I don't know what is going to happen to them at the end of 10, 15 years. So before starting, what is the present status of vaccines? I'd like to say that vaccine development started right in March. And the road at present for getting a vaccine into the market is very uncertain and it's very bumpy. Presently, there are around 165 vaccines at various stages of development, and only 23 of these vaccines are in human studies. So usually what happens is during the development of any vaccine, we have 4 stages. One is preclinical stage, where we do in labs and other 3 are in clinical stage. And in this clinical stage, we have phase 1, first in humans, phase 2, we just have the preliminary data, and phase 3, which is a data where we get efficacy and safety will be analyzed. So at present, with the impact of pandemic, there is accelerated development of vaccine because of this pandemic. During this accelerated stage, it takes minimum 12 to 18 months for a vaccine to come to market. But still, various governments are at various stages where they want to accelerate even this 16 to 12 to 18 months. So when we come to various stages of development of vaccine, I'll just brief saying that in phase 3, we have only three vaccines. One is Wuhan vaccine that is developed by Beijing Institute, and it is an inactivated virus. And other thing is Moderna vaccine, which is a mRNA vaccine, which is under the wrapseed of National Institute of Health. These 2 are only the vaccines that are under phase 3. Other things which we have after phase 3 and before phase 3, it is phase 2. So some vaccines are in between phase 2 and 3. These are the vaccines that are being developed by Oxford and AstraZeneca, and we have another vaccine developed by Pfizer, which is it is coming to phase 3, and it has complete. These 2 have coming to phase 3 and they have completed phase 2. And when we come to phase 2, we have Covaxin, in which I am associated as a principal investigator at Nizam's Institute of Medical Sciences, and we are almost going to complete phase 1, but still government and everybody have announced that phase 1 has been completed. Other vaccine that is developed by an Indian pharmaceutical company, Jaycovit, and it is also in phase 2 unofficially, but officially it is under phase 2. Unofficially, phase 1 has not been completed for both these vaccines. And some vaccines which are under phase, which have completed phase 2 and have come to phase 1 and are about to enter phase 2 include those developed by another institute in China, and the one developed by Imperial College of London has also completed phase 1 and it is going to enter phase 2. And now when we come to phase 1, there are various pharmaceutical companies which are started doing human studies first time in the drug development process, like GSK, Novartis, and University of Queensland. These are the 3 or 4 vaccines that have entered the first time human clinical studies for the drug development process. And it basically like that, we have around 30 molecules that are under various development stages of clinical human drug development. But totally there are around 165 types of vaccines around the world that are in various types of various stages of drug development. Out of this 165, we have only around 23 that are mainly in the human stage of drug development. So these are the various vaccines that are available for us, and we are waiting for them to come so that we can take. But what happened suddenly out of blue, the Russian government has authorized, given a regulatory approval yesterday for a regulatory approval for vaccination on mass basis, mainly in the Russian healthcare workers. The regulatory approval has been given. So this, the development of this Gamaleya vaccine started, and it has hardly completed 2 to 3 months of testing in humans. So I think there are so many problems with the approval process in Russian. So let us forget about it, but still this has been approved for this approval is mostly not for public, I think, but it is mostly for healthcare workers and frontline warriors against the virus. And yesterday what happened was this Pfizer has come out with a publication in Nature, which states that their vaccine has completed phase 1 and phase 2 of human studies, and it is showing good clinical efficacy and safety, and it has to be evaluated again in phase 3. And what happened in India was that what happens is nothing is happening, but in India we are planning to have there was an expert committee meeting yesterday in National Expert Committee on vaccine administration. So now when we come to the stage of, when we come to the Indian scenario, there are many vaccines which are about to enter the market, because most now this AstraZeneca has started phase 3, and two vaccines is, one is developed by Zydus and other developed by Bharat Biotech. They have completed phase 1. So these three vaccines may come out at any time in the next future 6 months. So what government has decided was they have started a committee like called the National Expert Committee and Vaccine Administration. So here the key issues that were discussed were, what is the, which vaccine should be administered, which vaccine has to be approved, what is the best suitable vaccine for Indian scenario, how to select the vaccine out of various groups, types of vaccine that are coming into market to be approved, which to be approved, how to buy that, how to deliver it, and who should be the first person who should receive. So this was the thing that was discussed yesterday. I don't know what was the outcome, but still, based on the various stages of clinical stages of drug development, of this vaccine development, we might expect vaccine, let us say last month of 2020 or first 2 months of 2021. So this is the best case scenario where we can be vaccinated in these 3 months. So until these 3 months, I think we have to wait and pray to God, so that all the efforts done by various people are going to be fruitful, and we are going to get this vaccine so that we can be prevented from taking the getting infected with this virus. This is the present scenario where another 3 or 4 months, 4 to 6 months is needed for getting a vaccine. This is the maximum thing that can happen. Thank you. And I just want to say that as the topic is very much interesting, I want to stay to the end.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. CV, for that. And then, yeah, that's a great rundown or a quick summary of where we are with respect to the vaccines. I was going to ask you about the news on Russian vaccine, and you touched upon it also. So that's very, very optimistic indeed to know various things that are going on. And you outlined that it would take about 4 to 6 months for us to see some light at the end of the tunnel. And that's good, very good news. I would like to ask Dr. Adams if you have any perspective on the vaccine situation.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in vaccine development, so I don't think I have a whole lot to add there in terms of the pipeline. I think, it's something that everybody's very excited about. Certainly, I think all of us long to get back to some sort of semblance of normal. It's been a long time in quarantine, and I think that it's difficult, even though this timeline is so accelerated already. I think it's, for a lot of families, just hard to be like, another 6 months of this. But certainly, I think we're all happy to hear that the preliminary studies are looking good, and that there's immune response. So those are all pieces of good news.
Great. Dr. Raghu, do you have any perspectives on that, please?
Oh, the same what CP told, but about the Russian vaccine, confusion amongst the public. We as doctors, we don't know anything about that vaccine, to be frank, because Russian government is not open. So don't put any hope on that vaccine. As far as the rest of the world is concerned, it's an indigenous vaccine developed for Russian people, and he's not even trying in the public. He's trying only in the certain sector of the people. We as clinicians look at it as a phase 2 studies. Actually, we don't look it as a we don't look at it as a effective vaccine which already tried and implemented in a proper way. So it is a phase 2 vaccine actually. So Russian vaccine, don't look at it as a bright tunnel or bright light to close any path away. But rest of the vaccines, as he said, only the Oxford vaccine is in the phase 3. All are in the phase 2. So hope, keeping the fingers crossed, 2021 January, we may have a effective vaccine.
Thank you. Dr. Sharmila, do you have any views on that, please?
Yeah, while we are all hopefully waiting for a vaccine, my thoughts are that, like, with how the incidence is increasing here, how it's the disease itself is accelerating here. Are we really going to, is it really going to make such a big change when it actually arrives, considering the fact that most of the susceptibles probably would have been infected by then. But then vaccine always is important because we do not still know whether we can have a reinfection with this virus, how long the natural immunity is going to last. And obviously for the high risk groups, it is definitely going to be a boon. But I don't see such a thing happening for at least 6 months from now, at least by the, I mean, not before the year end, from what I gather.
So now that we have the expert with us, so do you guys have any questions for Dr. Reddy on vaccines? Because he's the expert on it. If the panel have any questions for him, we can fire those questions to him as well. I'm going to also check on YouTube if anybody has questions for Dr. Reddy on vaccines specifically. If you guys don't have any question, I have a question for you, sir. This seems very fast. So one of the things as a common man I have is generally vaccine development takes a long time. So how are you guys taking care of safety precautions in terms of, are you shortcutting any steps that you would normally do? So I think that will be something people want to know. So I would like you to address that.
We are not shortcutting any process. All the process are going as we do a normal thing. But the only thing here that is happening is the step between starting to first dosing. That was usually takes around 1 or 2 months. These all what we call logistic things. These are logistic things. So you get an ethics committee approval. This usually takes long time. So this has been cut down. It has been cut. Usually, let's say, for example, in our institute, it takes almost 30 to 45 days to get an approval from ethics committee. But here, what happened was we got it within 4 to 4 days. So this sort of things, this sort of bureaucracy things are being cut down. So that instead of taking 45 days, we got the approval in 4 days. So this 40 days has been saved. So like this, we are cutting down on the timelines, not the actual process where we are going to affect the safety and well-being of the volunteers who are participating.
And one more point I want to add on here. The technology of developing vaccine changed a lot. When you compare to the plague vaccine days and the vaccine now, the process of developing vaccine and the technology changed a lot. With the help of the technology, they are preparing vaccine, the steps also they are making it very fast. So that's the way so many vaccines are coming out, though the disease is only 6 months old. And as he said, the CP said, all the bureaucratic delays are getting cut short because of the emergency kind of situation world is facing now. Everywhere, not only in India, everywhere in the world, the political influence to bring out a new product or political barriers to bring out all cut down, but not the safety and this one. Safety is 100% taken care. That's why it is taking 18 months.
Usually, the Indian government, it takes 6 months to give an approval for any new drug or any new thing. But here we just got it in 2 days. So this sort of things are being cut down drastically.
So I heard the same things were happening in US as well, where they're speeding up many of the bureaucratic or administrative processes to get them to move on faster, and they're not shortcutting any. And in fact, I heard on one of the radio NPR, I believe, one of the AstraZeneca clinicians, he was saying that they should perhaps adapt this model forever for vaccine development, because there is whenever there is a need for vaccine development, the urgency behind that is pretty much the same. Now that it's glorified because of pandemic, but generally speaking, the vaccine is needed for human beings as quickly as it can get out. So the doctor was saying that we should perhaps have this kind of a diligence in doing vaccine development, no matter what. So maybe we can learn from this and come up with this, whatever methods we're using right now, use it forever in the world of vaccines as we go forward. So that's great information. Do you guys, Dr. Sharmila, I thought you were asking him a question.
Yes, I have a question. Dr. Reddy garu, what do you think would be the protective efficacy of this vaccine? what's your take on that with Dr. Fauci? I mean, having to say that it's about 50%. I mean, all of us know that the flu vaccine that we have, the quadrivalent one, is around 70% is what they say. But my personal experience of the children that I've treated, H1N1, I have seen almost 100%. All those cases were in unvaccinated children. I haven't seen H1N1 occurring in, I mean, it's a limited group that I see, but there is no single child who is vaccinated with flu and then presented with H1N1 infection. So what's your take on the present vaccine? How efficacious, how much of a protective value do you think it's going to offer to us?
So to get a educated and a scientific answer for this, it will take another 14 days, 2 to 3 weeks. But an illiterate guess from my side, based on the inputs from the sponsor and based on my personal experience for the last 2 to 3 weeks, might be around 60 to 80%. This is an uneducated guess. Educated guess and scientific guess, it will be exactly known in 2 to 3 weeks. So once we complete the first, we have just completed the second booster dose on 14 days, and next at the end of 28 days of vaccination, when we do the immunological response, we'll know the exact response. So it will take another 3 weeks. Uneducated guess might be 60 to 80%.
At the moment, how are you? How are you measuring? I'm asking you a very basic question. Probably this is to benefit all of those who are listening. But at the moment, how are you evaluating the efficacy of the vaccine? What exactly is the parameter that you're measuring to say that
immunological
this vaccine?
Immunological
Which one
response,
particularly?
It's
about the IgG antibodies.
Yes, IgG and IgM both at the end of 28 days after giving booster dose.
And we are not actually looking at any kind of measurement of the T cell activity that could have been induced or anything like that.
Those are being done. All those are being done.
Do we have any evidence that tells us that those antibodies are actually protective against catching the disease? Because that's been one of the big discussions, right? If you have antibodies because you've been through COVID, are you protected from catching it again, or are you not?
Yeah, we are doing it at duration of analysis will be for around 6 months.
Yeah, Dr. Sara, if I have to add a small thing to this, I mean, it is initially there were doubts about. I mean, they started believing that antibody response, the quantitative titer, is going to tell us how effectively we have mounted a immune response to the infection and how protected you are. They were almost directly correlating this. But right now, I believe from what I know, it is like this. If someone has, it's not actually the antibody that is going to protect you from the virus, but how is it still relevant is the quantitative antibody response shows how much of an immune response you have mounted. So this is an indirect way. They're kind of viewing this as an indirect evidence of the T cell response too. So if you have been effectively, if you have mounted this amount of response, you probably, your T cells also would have been involved and they're ready to face the infection. This is my understanding about the whole thing. But because measurement of T cell response involves complex things and it's time consuming, it's cost consuming, we right now are going to measure the antibody response and then take that as an indirect evidence for the efficacy of the vaccine. This is what my understanding is. Dr. Reddy can correct me if he.
They were doing now mainly immunoglobulins, IgG, IgM.
I want to just add on something for the people watching the YouTube. Any vaccine has got safety and efficacy, 2 levels. Safety is evaluated based on the symptoms and any side effects of the particular vaccine we are giving. So all these 28 days, whoever received the vaccine will be thoroughly evaluated under the clinical supervision, any symptoms they are developing as a side effect to the vaccine, because you are indirectly or directly a dead vaccine or a live vaccine, you are giving that same virus into the body of particular person. So before going to the level of checking the efficacy, it's very important for any clinician involved in the developed vaccine to check whether it is really inducing any symptoms to the patient. Or if asymptomatic patient and it no side effects, then only they will go for checking the efficacy. Efficacy they will check by reviewing the immunity levels in the body. They will do it by checking two antibodies known as IgG and IgM. If they are effectively responding with this IgG and IgM bodies high level of high titers in the blood, that shows that this is ready for going for next phase. In the phase 3, what they will do is they will increase the population number where they got immunity, where they got the vaccination doses of this particular vaccine, which is already tested for 2 phases. So in the third phase, they will increase the number population and they will check again the same procedure. So that is why he's telling it takes 6 more months, because it's a mass population. It will be big number in the third phase, not in the small numbers what they are doing in phase 1 and phase 2. So this is why the vaccine will go step by step. So what he's telling, 60 to 80% efficacy. That means 100 out of 60 out of 100 are getting good immune response towards this vaccine. And we have some, I think Dr. Sarah and Dr. Sharmila knows about this, some kind of vaccines which are already in use, like chickenpox vaccine and rotavirus vaccine, which may not induce 100% immunogenicity, but they will reduce the severity of the disease. Maybe this is the same case regarding, I'm guessing only, this is also a wild case, I'm doing it. Maybe this is the same case for this COVID vaccines also, because the rest of the 40% may have a milder disease than compared to the severe one. This is my take. CP can add on to that.
So until 14 days, we don't have any scientific guess.
Yeah, that's good. So I think we covered enough on the topic of vaccines. I think let's move on to the other core topic that we have for today, which is a lot of people that are concerned about right now is about what to do with the situation of with the kids, especially there is a lot of noise around, how COVID impacts kids, and what kind of, how do we decide whether to send to schools or not, whether to open the schools or not, and what about the routine, medical care and vaccinations, and all of these topics around kids are that are something that the parents are worried about. So we're going to now switch to that topic, and then based on any questions that come along later, we'll pick up those questions and answers. And I'm going to switch to Dr. Sarah Adams first to talk to us about how COVID-19 impacts kids, and how do we even interact with kids, explaining this pandemic to them, or this virus to them. Dr. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. So I think there's a few different points to be made here. The first one is, I think we're all very grateful that COVID-19 doesn't affect the majority of children in a severe way. So I work in a children's hospital, and our total numbers of children that are admitted to the hospital sick enough to have to be in the hospital with a COVID-19 infection are low. We don't see the volumes that the adult hospital is seeing in cities that are being hit by a surge. And I think that is very reassuring for all of us, especially for those of us who are parents who are worrying about our little ones. So children can absolutely develop severe COVID-19 and be sick enough to require ICU care, but the numbers of children that require that kind of care are very low. So that is one point. The next point, I think, is that a lot of people have heard about this MISC, this inflammatory syndrome that we see in some children after COVID-19. So this is cases that first got published in the UK and in New York after they had their big surges of COVID-19 patients. And we tend to see the numbers of MIS-C cases about 6 weeks or so after the peak in a city of COVID-19 cases. So we believe that this is an inflammation response in the body that probably comes after the acute COVID-19 infection. We do know that a lot of children who are infected with COVID-19 are either asymptomatic, they have no symptoms at all, or have very little symptoms. So the parents and the child might have not even really been aware that the child was sick. And then a few weeks later, we have this inflammatory response syndrome. But it's quite rare. Our total numbers that we see in this are very small. The children who do develop this, they are quite seriously ill, but the total numbers are small. So in general, we don't see very many children who have to come into the hospital because of COVID-19. Then there's a whole different area of the question, which is, what about our kids' development and their psychiatric health, their mental health, their happiness, their going to school? How is that all affected in a time of a pandemic? And I think there's really so many different questions we could talk about with this question. I think the number one thing that I want to keep in mind is children are incredibly resilient. They are often bounce back quicker and easier from both health trauma and mental trauma than adults do. We want to protect them and we need to protect them, and it's our responsibility to do everything that we can to protect them and to help them through this time that's challenging. But I think we can also be assured that they're tougher than we give them credit for sometimes. And a lot of them will, once this is all in the past, will go on to have wonderful, thriving lives and be able to tell stories of what was on when they were kids with this, but not have any ill effects. And so I think that's what all of us want for the kids that we care about. And so I think that is something that we can be reassured about.
Great, yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sarah, about giving very, very important information on the resiliency aspect for kids, and also when it comes to talking to them about this, right? When you have children next to you, you're telling them about how do you address the social aspects of it, and then also the pressure they're under. I mean, especially I've heard from a few teenagers' parents that it's very hard for them to reconcile with what's going on in the world. So how do you address that side?
Yeah, I think it really is going to vary widely with the age of the children. So we should probably talk about a few different age ranges. So let's talk first about our preschoolers, our really little ones. And I think they take their cues completely from what they see in the family members and the people that love them, that are around them, right? So the more that we can be calm, that we can stick to what our family routines are, have as much normalcy as possible, the better off they are. I would try to protect them from watching too much news coverage, adult style TV. I know for a lot of us, it runs in the background and we want to be up to date and know what's happening. But kids process sometimes more than we think. So I would be a little bit mindful of that at a young age, where they maybe can't quite put their questions that they have into words about what they've heard. So I would protect them a little bit from that. And I think that we can help them by giving very honest but simple answers. So, have you noticed that we're not going to see these people that we usually see? So the reason why is because there is a virus that's making some people sick, and we can help everybody to be safe by staying at home and not seeing as many people. And then wait and see if there's questions. Kids are really good about helping us to know what level of detail they want, because they're really good at asking why this and why that, and why does it have to be that way? So wait for those questions, but bring up the topic so that they know that this is something that you're happy to talk about with them, and that you are a source of information for them if they have any thoughts about it. And that is also definitely true for our elementary school kids, our slightly older but still relatively young children. They probably are dealing with a little bit more emotions. They're going to more miss their regular friends. They're going to more miss their normal routines, whatever that would have been of school. Very few people are going to school exactly like they used to. We have varying levels of changes, but pretty much everybody is facing some kind of change in how they do that. So these kids are more likely to have some level of stress due to all things that are unfamiliar and different. Again, we're going to be a really big resource for them in terms of how they see how they should respond to this. So if they see parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and loved ones and caregivers that are generally calm, generally positive, and that frame things in a way of, we can do this, we're going to do this, this is the way it is, it's going to be okay, that's going to be incredibly reassuring to those children. We can, be annoyed with whatever school policy we disagree with, or we think they made the wrong call on, and we should vent about that to our friends and partners after the kids are in bed. But we should be mindful about how we say those things and how we discuss those things when our kids are listening. Because if they're going to have to go and comply with that school policy, we want them to have a kind of a positive outlook on that. So I think we can help them in that way. Again, with the elementaries, a lot of them are still going to be very concrete thinkers. So when you give answers to questions, I would say, keep them always true, never lie to them, but keep them simple, and don't go into too many abstract concepts that lead on from the initial answer.
Yeah, Dr.
And I
Sarah, I
think
have one.
yeah.
I have one question for you. The oath we take in this program is to address the myths around the news channels. There's a big news going around in, I don't know whether it is a true or not. 97,000 kids got infected with the COVID after reopening the schools for past 2 weeks in America. Is it alarming to the parents who are watching to send their kids back to school? Because we have to address that, because that's a worrying factor for the kids. As a clinician, we have to tell them what we can do.
Yes, so I think there's a few different things about that number. Absolutely, I think it's alarming for a lot of people who are hearing these numbers and who are saying, what are we doing? It's not safe. Why are our kids in school? I think that this number is somewhat difficult to interpret. A lot of places in the US, actually, school has not restarted. So I think to frame it in, school restarted and now we have 100,000 new cases is not quite correct. The school start dates are very staggered, not just geographically, but even just within the same school district. And so it's difficult to know how to relate that to schools reopening. There was a study that came out recently that looked at, back in the day when we closed the schools, what kind of effect did that have on disease transmission? And their estimate was that tens of thousands of cases were prevented by closing schools, and that it made a significant impact. But even that analysis, it was very carefully done, but it's just difficult when you have whole countries that change so many different things at the same time. How do you tease out in the numbers what happened due to school closures and what didn't? So I think with this number that's on the news recently, we have a similar problem. How do we know that it has anything to do with school closure, especially since that a lot of our schools haven't even reopened yet, even though we're kind of in that process? The other thing that's more difficult about that number is that some of the numbers that came into that, the upper level was 24, age 24 years, and very few of us think of 24-year-olds as children. So I think that number is just difficult to know what to do with, and is probably a better headline than it is a scientific data to do anything with. The last children's data that I saw from the AAP was a total of 380,000 child cases in the US cumulatively since the beginning of the pandemic, which represents, I think, approximately 9% of total cases, and about 500 in 100,000 children that have been affected by COVID-19.
That's good info. Dr. Sharmila, do you have
this would be applicable to Indian community and Middle East, because we are not opening the schools still. We are just keeping it safe by saying that up to December. Even my kid's school is very clearly saying that MOE, Ministry of Education in Kuwait, is saying up to December no schools. only online schools.
I think even
So
in US, many of them have decided that first 3 months are going to be online, given the fact that the reopening of the economy didn't happen the way they planned. And there was a surge of cases in the states that were doing well before, like Texas, Florida, Arizona, who were doing very well initial part of the pandemic, and then they started reopening the economy, and then whole thing fell apart from there. So because of that, I think it put a dent in the plans of opening the schools the way they were intending to do. I think they've gone back to that. So Dr. Sharmila, do you have, you're
Yes.
another pediatrician on the panel, so I'm sure you have your
Yeah.
views on how do we does it impact kids? How do we talk to them? And
Yes. Like I think I have few things to point out. The first thing is, I think back here in India, we are kind of fortunate for two reasons. One is our whatever is made out, our numbers with regards to the percentage of children infected versus the adults is like from the official figures, it's around 1%, which is quite low. And as Dr. Sarah pointed out, I mean, I have firsthand experience of dealing with COVID-19 positive kids, and almost, I would say, nearing greater than 99% of them are doing quite well, so well that they don't even need to come to the hospital. So most of them we are following up online. But having said this, I would want to add a word of caution. Even before the multisystem inflammatory syndrome reached India, right now we have some anecdotal reports. We do have a few cases in the place that I am, that's in Hyderabad too. There are reports of that. So with this lurking around the corner, and this actually, as Dr. Sarah rightly pointed out, happens after, say, about 4 to 8 weeks after the peak incidence of the infections, which we have been seeing for the last 4 weeks. And now we anticipate more of this multisystem inflammatory syndrome to come in. And this is sometimes a fatal condition, unlike what we have been seeing all these days, COVID-19 just being like any other respiratory infection, not causing much of morbidity or mortality. Very little morbidity, I would say. But then the multisystem inflammatory syndrome, even if the numbers are very small, this sometimes is fatal. And both of us as pediatricians, we do know that the kind of emotional upheaval it causes when a child is affected versus an adult who's affected, the kind of emotional burden and the emotional responses that we see from parents, this is going to explode. Even a few cases are going to cause a lot of response from the public and also a lot of chaos. So when it comes to reopening the schools, there are two things. Did we achieve anything by closing down the schools is what we have to know first in the first place. As far as history goes, and as far as our experiences from the various other countries goes, yes, they do. I mean, there is some data which is supportive of that. Closing down schools and colleges definitely decreases the transmission. And while you're reopening, there are two things that we have to be worried about. First thing is, all this while, I mean, roughly all the cases that I have been seeing, the children probably are infected from the adults who have gone out to back to their work and then came back, or they've gone to their grocery store and then come back. Children, most of the times that I've seen, almost about 40 children that I'm following up, none of them have stepped out of their house. So most likely they got infected from the adults of the house who also tested positive. But now, once the schools open, it's going to be a reverse phenomena. Children will get infected. We are not very worried because it's not a severe infection, but then they have the potential to infect the susceptible older people at home. And this is indirectly going to increase the death rate because they are going to infect the highly susceptible, cocooned all this while they were cocoon, both the children and the grandparents. And India, unlike in the world, I think there is a large section of population where the grandparents do not stay alone. There are many joint families, and for the underprivileged, this is going. They do not have a way to cocoon their elderly susceptibles. So even if it doesn't impact the mortality rate in the children, I think this is going to have an indirect thing. And before we reopen, we need to figure this out. And the advantageous thing that India has is we are behind a couple of nations by 4 to 6 weeks. So we are all observing and learning from them. So I think, and it's heartening. Just I think it was about 16 or 18 hours ago, there was an official announcement from the Ministry of Health, Central Ministry of Health, saying that it's not in a hurry to open the schools and it will not be opening probably most likely till the end of the year, which is good. Why? Because there are two things that we have to deal with. First, let us first get clear about the incidence of the multisystem inflammatory syndrome, which is now starting and which might reach its peak in the next 4 weeks. And then we also, by which time we will also have data about the other countries who have opened their schools and how it is impacting their overall mortality rate. It's not just about the children. This is one thing I wanted to say. And the other thing is, yes, in India, there is two types of, the public schools, like the government run schools and the private schools. While we wait for data from other countries, yes, I also accept the school dropout rate might rise phenomenally if this goes on forever in the government run schools, because these children have no access, very limited access or almost no access to online education. So one whole academic year gone. Yes, children are very resilient. They'll come back. They must be waiting to come back. But then what impact it has on the attitudes of parents about sending them back to school. I have personal experience of parents of these underprivileged children seeking employment for their children because there is a 1 year gap in their thing, and this might encourage some children to drop out of the school, particularly the age group between 16 to 20, where employment, or 18 to 20, where employment will be allowed, and they get used to this kind of income in their houses, and then they might think, okay, that's no big deal to send them back to school. This is one lurking important issue in India, at least.
It has the economic
So
angle to it. Yeah.
Yes, and also the school dropout rate. And you will be surprised. There is one more concern in India, that is, there is on the sidelines, it has been reported that in certain districts, child marriages are on the rise. This is because of two reasons. One of them being, okay, the children are anyway at home. Child marriages, when I mean, it will be like 16, around 16 to 21. This is the vulnerable population where they're pushed into employment or they're pushed into marriages. They're neither adults nor children. So this group is going to be affected with child marriages and dropout from schools and never to get back into the education. But this is one aspect. The other aspect is that how safe is it for the rest of the population, because the children are going back to school, with respect to teachers being more infected and more vulnerable, and also the grandparents back at home. And how safe is it for the children themselves? While we are still figuring out the multisystem inflammatory syndrome, which is fatal in some cases, I don't think we should rush into school opening. We should wait for models to evolve from the rest of the world. And yes, how well are they going to take? Yes, please.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask Dr. Sarah about the school situation in the US. Should they open? Should they not open? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think two separate questions. One is, what is the right thing from a population health perspective? What should our school districts be doing? And then the second question that I think a lot of my patients' families are asking themselves is, what is the right thing for that individual family? What should they be doing with the choices that they have individually? So I think from a population health perspective, a lot of it's going to be about how prevalent is COVID-19 in that geographic location. So how much of it is around in that area, because that's going to vastly affect what you're expecting to see in schools. So there's a wonderful map in the New York Times a week or two ago where you could plug in, are you looking at a 500 kid school or a 100 kid school, and in what area, and it would tell you based on the current level of COVID-19 activity in that area, you would expect this many children with COVID-19 or children or adults with COVID-19 to come to school on the first day of school, or was it on the first week of school? I can't remember, one of those. And I think that, there's obviously some assumptions there in real life. Obviously some people who are feeling sick wouldn't go to school. Not everybody who in that district who has COVID-19 right now is going to present to school. But still, that is the general statistical question you'd be looking at a population health level, is how many kids or adults who have COVID-19 but who are either not symptomatic because they're not going to have any symptoms, or pre-symptomatic, they're going to develop symptoms but they don't have them yet. And we know that you're actually at your most infectious probably in the 1 or 2 days right before you get the symptoms. So how many of those people are going to show up at a school in the first quarter of school? And if it's a lot, if we're going to be closing down classrooms every 2 weeks for 2 weeks, then as much as we want to open a school because it's going to be good for children to have to go to school, it's not going to be good for them to have this completely disrupted semester where they're back in school, back out of school, back in school, back out of school. So at that point, we'd be better off trying to figure out something virtually, right? So it's going to depend, I think, very much on what is the level in that population. And in order to know what is the level in our population, we need to have just really good testing that's widespread and easily accessible. We still have areas in the country where I'm hearing from colleagues that they can only get patients tested if those patients are sick enough to have to present to the hospital. That's great, and I'm glad we can test those people. But if we want data to make population health decisions on, we need to be able to test anybody who thinks they may possibly have COVID because their nose is running or sniffling or they don't smell very good today. And so we need that data to be able to make these kinds of decisions about school. A lot of school districts here are deciding to go virtual for at least the first so many weeks, and then they're going to see what their population data is at that point and keep making decisions. But we also have school districts that are opening up, and in some areas, I think that's because their disease transmission is low right now. And then it's in some areas we seem to have school districts open and the disease transmission levels are not that low. And that definitely is, I think, more concerning. The other thing I want to really talk about though is from the individual's family standpoint. And we have to acknowledge here that not all families have choices, right? It very much depends on your level of privilege, your economic stability, your family dynamics, as to how many different choices you have about what you're going to do with school this year. But there's a lot of families who do have some choice and they're trying to figure out how to make this decision. And what's best for that family isn't necessarily going to be what's good for the population as a whole. So how do we, as parents, how do you think about this? And I think one of the ways that we can help as physicians is from very early on in medical training, we're trained to think about this risk-benefit ratio. Most things that we do in medicine have some risk to it. Most people know if you go to get an x-ray, there's radiation there, there's some risks to that. So you weigh up the risk of radiation against the benefit that this person's going to get from the x-ray. We have to make a similar kind of weighing when we decide what to do in school. So what is the risk to your family if a child goes out and they go into school and they bring home COVID-19? Do you have people at home who are high risk? Do you have your grandparents? Do you have, is there a parent or a child with a chronic illness? What risk mitigation things are they doing in that school that will decrease that risk? So are they wearing masks? Do they have extra time for hand washing? Do they have really good policies on how people are going to stay home for, how long they're going to stay home for if they have symptoms? what kind of things is the school putting in place to decrease the risk of COVID-19 coming home with a child? But then on the other hand side, what is the risk of not sending that kid to school? And I think your points on what you're seeing in India and the concerns you have for children not returning to school and child marriage and early employment, those are really valid points. And every family can think of those points for their own individual family. So how disruptive is this going to be to the parents' employment? Do you have childcare? Is it going to be great grandma who does the childcare? So now we have a risk on the other side.
Yes.
How well equipped does a parent feel in order to be able to take on homeschooling or helping a kid with virtual school? So some families will be able to navigate that relatively well, even if it's stressful. Other families, this would be a really high risk to take their kid out of school for a year if there's nothing in place for how to manage schooling for that year. So that can be a very individual decision to say, I think for my family, the risk of going to school is higher than the risk of just managing at home, and we're going to manage at home for this year. And then other families might say, for my family, the risk of disrupting the school year is higher than the risk of catching COVID out in the community, and so we're going to go to school. So where we do have choices, and I think a lot of families in this country at the moment do have quite a bit of choice, we can make those kind of risk assessments for our own individual situation.
Yeah, great inputs. I'm going to ask Dr. Reddy, so you have any inputs, sir, on this? I know you've been listening in. You need to unmute. If you want to add anything to the topic on this particular topic about kids, okay.
Nothing from my side.
Okay.
Yeah, I have something to add on.
Okay.
Just I want to tell whoever watching the YouTube, if you have a choice, maybe I'm harsh on the economy side. If you have a choice of say taking online classes versus school, because this situation is so confusing, and even for the clinicians, we are so breaking our heads about this problem and this disease. For the parents to take a safe bet is to have a online schooling at least for next 2 months to be safe. This is my take. Anywhere in the world, have it at least next 2 months. We will be having a clear picture of the vaccine and how the schools are going to get equipped for this managing the COVID-19, as Dr. Tara was telling, to maintain the social distancing, because they have to cut short the seats, they have to cut short, they have to have an extra time for hand washing. They have so for this all to have it. I don't think schools are ready at this time because they never saw it, and most of the schools are in the break time during this 2 months or 3 months summer break was there. For them to get acclimatized to the COVID-19 situation, you at least 2 months you can go away online classes if you have that option. If you don't have that option, go and inspect yourself in the school. What are the safety measures they are implementing and how best your kid is taken care there. If it is sure, you have to send there. There is no other option. And another thing, we are talking about the school kids, but I want to tell you the kids who are at home, quarantine kids, how to deal with them. There are only 5 steps I'll give it to the parent. Understand. Understand in the sense, as Dr. Sara was telling, there can be an anxiety, there can be a sadness, there can be any kind of reaction because of their home staying, the kids. So you understand as a parent that it is a natural phenomena happening to a kid. It's a bouncy ball. Kept it in a closed box. It will burst out anytime. So you expect that burst from the kids anytime. So and as a process, you must listen. The second step is listen. Listen to them. They are wonderful. They create some wonders with their talks. Listen to them patiently. Patiently. Most of the parents are working from home. Take out, mute your office work and listen to them. What's happening around with them, and then comfort them. Comfort them is not by giving a laptop again or not by giving a device again. Comfort them by simple procedures like storytelling, involving them with their social activities, involving in their activity like drawing, or sit with them playing. That is the where they will get comfort from the parents or grandparents. And also there is one more called praise them. If they have any talent, if you found any talent, praise them. Even a smallest of talent, you praise them, they will just keep it there in the heart. And the reassurance, don't give them any false news, or don't keep them on the news channels where everywhere COVID-19 is oozing out. Just give a reassured news about and tell them what is COVID-19, and have a role playing in COVID-19 scenarios. What I did to my kid personally is I made her to made a pepper and soap water kind of stuff, technique, hand wash and all this. She's doing every day. She wears a coat and she says that keep away from me. I want this, I want this. She will keep telling how to hand wash, just role playing. That makes them to understand the scenario that this is very easy. This is not so tough. We shouldn't be giving an impression that it's very tough condition we are in, we are locked down, we oh this. No, yes, we are in, but that should not be affecting the kids mentality. That's what my, so follow these 5 steps for those kids who are quarantined. And if you have a choice of having online next 2 months, as I said, maybe I'm harsh, maybe some of the panelists may not accept that also. If they have a choice of going for online next 2 months, please do take it and enjoy your stay at home.
And yeah,
Yeah, I just have a small question as a layperson. What is the effect of this sort of staying at home without any physical movement, without any physical activity on the children's growth, let us say at the end of 10-15 days? It's my layman question.
Sarah, you want to take
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want kids to be active, and thankfully they are very good at figuring out ways to be active in very small spaces, as any parent trying to keep a room clean can tell you. So I think I would encourage the kids to jump and run and make handstands and do all the activity that they can figure out to do in the space that they have. We, locally here in North Carolina, we were very blessed with a long spring this year. We usually have a short spring and quickly we're into very high temperatures in the summer. And it was so nice to see so many people going for walks just within their little family unit. And so when you have outdoor space available to you, I think make use of that. But where you don't have outdoor space, let the kids come up with their movement activities and encourage them, because I think my kids probably only need about a square 6-foot space to find some kind of trampolining game or something to use their activity. And that is very important. We don't want them sitting on their backside playing video games and watching TV for 3 months. We don't want that from a health perspective.
And a note to the strict moms over there watching, and even in this panel, don't restrict your kids to be extra, what is it, tight or tidy in the house. Let them make mess and enjoy cleaning that mess. That is also part of your life. So this is a time where they will make mess, sure, for sure. So be with them, patient with them, and enjoy that time. Don't be strict. If you stop them at that point of time, they may go back again to the device, or rethinking and sitting alone, or think that is very dangerous than your house becoming a mess. So enjoy the mess they create during this time. That is the message to the strict moms over there.
So I have a question
enjoy
from YouTube. I wanted to ask you guys. This is general question, I believe. Are they seeing any new strains of coronavirus other than the original one we saw in the beginning? No new strains, right?
Unfortunately, the question's answer stays no,
Okay.
or we don't know. Either of these two, because we don't know what's happening really, because some very few cases where there is a reinfection happening, that could be a different strain or same strain causing it. And the severity, as Dr. Sarah was telling, severity is high, and in most post-inflammatory syndromes are high in the western part of the world and also in the US, but low in America and Middle East. We don't know what's happening with the strains because nobody read and published any data about that kind of strains or anything. They're all dealing it as a single strain right now. No new strains as far as scientific news is concerned.
As you said, we don't know. And another thing I want to add to this, we don't want to know. We want to know there is only one strain, and we pray to God that there should be only one strain.
Because your vaccines are all based on the fact that you're attacking one
Yes.
strain, right? Yeah, that's
Exactly the
important.
point. Exactly the point. All the 160 vaccines are based on thinking that it's only a single strain,
A
and
single
we,
strain.
as a clinicians, we pray and hope that it will be a single strain.
So I have one more question from YouTube. So this is about symptoms. The question is, initially they said it's a respiratory problems, losing taste and so on. Now they're hearing that normal headache also is considered as a COVID symptom. So
Uh,
what do you guys say to that
there,
question?
there are many atypical way of presenting the COVID. Be aware of that. There are some cases, few cases where only gastrointestinal symptoms are there, like diarrhea and vomiting with a fever. Not even fever, only diarrhea and vomiting. A simple headache, as the viewer was pointing out. So it's no more a respiratory virus. I will tell you, it's a multi-system virus as far as symptoms are concerned. Any symptom, don't treat over the counter medication. Please approach your doctor. He can assess you. He can tell you, and
So let me
specifically,
stop you there. So let me
yeah,
stop you there. So if I have a headache, let's say
yeah.
it stays for 10 minutes and goes away, I don't have to worry about.
No, no,
If I
no,
if
no,
I get a
no.
persistent headache for a longer period of time, that's when I get worried about, right?
That's it. Yeah. If
So
any other symptoms like vomiting and loose motions or anything, you have to
so
come back to the doctor.
anything happens for a sustained longer period of time is what I need to be worried about.
Yeah, 10 minutes headache is common nowadays because you are isolated at home and it comes and goes. Don't worry about those kind of tough stuff. But my advice is reduce the over the counter medication during this pandemic period. That won't help you much. Any symptom, please approach to your nearby doctor. He can assess you. There are two ways of looking at it. The way, as Dr. Sara was pointing out, the area where you are living in, the number of new cases happening, and the risk of you being getting infected, where how you got exposed to them, or do you have been to outside, or did you meet any new people? All this will be counted, and all this will be taken into account when you are talking to the doctor. You may be missing some points relating to the pandemic. If you talk to the doctor, he will discuss with you
I'll ask
everything
you a
and
question.
yeah,
Okay.
come out with
So
a correct picture for you. Yeah.
all these things can be done over a phone, right? If I can be talking to you on a Zoom call like this and then decide all that without really
Yes,
having to visit any
not
hospital.
not necessarily physical, and we don't advise you to go for a physical consultation for a simple things, because our fraternity is very, very engaged in dealing with this pandemic. So give them a break from these kind of normal cases where we can manage at home. Call them. I think most of the physicians are available to you on telephone nowadays. It's a modern world. So call them and take an advice. If they advise you to come to the physical consultation, please join there. Otherwise, physical consultation is not needed for everything. Yeah.
So one other,
I think
go ahead,
sorry,
Sarah. Go ahead.
since we're on physical office visits, I think I wanted to take the opportunity to say something slightly different about taking care of our children. One of the things that I think pediatricians have been seeing with a great level of concern is that we've seen the vaccination rates for other diseases where we have vaccines and we have effective and safe vaccines drop. And I understand right at the beginning, everything shut down. We stopped well child visits in some health systems for the first month or so. We were so focused on getting the hospitals and the health systems ready for this surge that we didn't know when it was going to hit and we didn't know how bad it was going to be. But we are back to doing regular well child care and we're back to doing vaccines. And this is really important. We're going to see a resurgence of vaccine preventable illness in the Western and well-vaccinated countries of the world, the likes of which we haven't seen in decades if we stop vaccinating children while we're waiting for the COVID-19 pandemic to stop. If you are concerned about going to your doctor's office, I suggest that you give them a call and you ask them, what are you doing to keep us safe? How can we come and get a vaccine visit without feeling like we're going to catch COVID-19 in your office? A lot of offices are having special times or special days for only well visits. I know in my health system, anyone with respiratory illness or any symptoms that are concerning for COVID-19 is actually seen at a special clinic site separate from all the other offices. But I bet you that most pediatricians, if you are still concerned despite all of those things, will come to the parking lot and give you your vaccines in your car if they need to. And we really want to get kids vaccinated. And I would just really beg for people to pay attention to that and not get 6 to 12 to 18 months behind while you're waiting for the pandemic to pass.
Thank you. That's an
That's
excellent point.
that's a wonderful
Yeah,
back, actually wonderful back.
So Raghu,
actually, yeah,
one
I'll tell you
second.
my.
Before you guys add, I'd like to let Dr. C.P. Reddy go because he needs to get back to his work. So Dr. Reddy, thank you again for your time. It's very precious. You're working on a very, very important thing for humanity. So could you again, before you leave, sir, could you again state for the live viewers, what exactly is the vaccine you are personally working on and where you are, and then you can leave. Thank you.
So we are working on Bharat Biotech India Limited developed vaccine. It's a live attenuated vaccine where we have just almost completed vaccination in phase 1. So just waiting for 14 days where we take the sample and assess the efficacy. Once we know this 14 days is over, we'll know how much effective it is. Then everything is in our hands to get it fast into the market.
Excellent. Thank you very much, sir. And we wish you all the best in your efforts. Okay. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Anytime.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's get back to the topic. I think it's very important point that you brought up, Sarah, about vaccinating normally, like normal vaccinations that kids should be getting are being ignored right now because everybody's talking about the pandemic. Sharmila, do you have anything to add, please?
Yes, I have some interesting things, so first-hand experience about this. Actually, it's about the resurgence of vaccine preventable illnesses, and India, when it is like almost declared polio free, now we are afraid that we might be going back on that because of the break in the vaccination thing. So we actually, and there is data already in the place that I stay in Hyderabad, in a certain pocket where measles seems to have had an outbreak already. So we had this meeting with a WHO expert urging all the pediatricians to please resume the vaccination as much possible, and also to report all cases of acute flaccid paralysis. What we say, that's a medical term. It's about paralysis of a limb, because they are afraid, they are already aware that polio might have a resurgence. So on this platform, I actually appeal to all the parents, like the other speaker pointed out, if you're in doubt, get reassured about how safe it is to go back, but then get back to the vaccinations. It's going to be extremely important. And while you look at the numbers about how badly children are affected with COVID versus the looming large risk of vaccine preventable illnesses coming back into the community and affecting one and all, and the huge work that has been done in eradicating polio, almost eradicating polio, and the morbidity of the morbidity of this particular illnesses like polio or measles or chickenpox or anything versus that little risk that you're taking for the COVID, which anyways is extremely mild in children. You should not be getting a break in the vaccination as much possible. The first 1 or 2 months, yes, we didn't know how to figure this out. We didn't have data about how dangerous COVID is in children. So that's when
why
we
is
actually
the break happening in the normal
vaccination
though? Why is the break happening? What is the reason?
That is because there are two things. The initial 2 months, we have advised children not to come for anything other than emergency visits,
Got it.
including vaccination. But then we've reverted to vaccinating children. Right now, it's the fear for the parents of contracting COVID-19 in the doctor's office that is preventing them from coming. But I personally have vaccinated a couple of children in their cars.
That's what
I was pleasantly amused when Dr. Sarah mentioned that, because I've already started doing that to reassure parents that they're not at risk. Couple of the parents have asked me, and then I go out of my office and do that. And we are actually we are in the process of rolling out a home vaccination program from Apollo. I'm actually in these next 48 hours, we are going to zero down on that too.
So Dr. Sarah, are you aware of any of that kind of efforts happening in US where vaccinations are taken to the place to people?
I know of a lot of parking lot and drive-through initiatives, as well as just a lot of pediatricians who are just flexible and care deeply about getting the kids vaccinated. And if you call them, they will figure something out with you.
Okay.
I don't know of a lot of home vaccine initiatives that were not already there before. There's some kind of outreach buses that different med schools run and things like that, but nothing new in the pandemic that I've heard of.
There's no organized efforts as such, right? For
Not that I know of.
just between
Uh,
the parent and the pediatrician, really. Okay.
Yeah, I want
Yes,
to
and
reassure
some
the
systems with drive-throughs.
Right. Yeah.
I want to take a call to the audience who are watching. When I said that give a break to the physicians, it doesn't mean that you will stop vaccinating your kids. Number one, don't mistake me on that way. Number two, chronic disease management. That's a very important part of the life. If you have a diabetes, if you have a hypertension, if you have a bronchial asthma, if you have no symptoms, please, please, please visit the doctor in a safe environment or call the doctor to continue your medication at least, or to take what kind of medication need to be added or removed, because pandemic won't stop your normal healthcare.
Normal illness.
Shouldn't be stopping. Normal healthcare should not be stopped. When I said give a
We-
break to the physician, it doesn't mean that you will give a break completely and you will stop all medication. No, it is not the way. If any milder illness, you can take an advice. But when a
And
chronic
yeah,
disease and regular vaccination, it has to be done. Please do that.
Okay. That's
and
great
this
point.
is an appeal to the parents and also fellow pediatricians that dengue is making its comeback. We have started seeing dengue cases. So think, I mean, now that a couple of months we were like seeing every single patient, adult or child, with only one view, one telescopic view. Is it COVID or not COVID? Is this particular symptom COVID symptom or not? And there would end it, because it was a panic state everywhere. But right now you should go back and see a child, what this particular symptom could be. Is it that this what's happening to the immense number of UTIs that you might be missing, the dengue cases that are coming up, and yes, the usual cross section, all the other diseases. So be wary of that. Dengue is making a comeback. We have started seeing dengue cases again.
Very
So
important.
it's not
I
just
think,
about COVID. And
we spent good an hour 20 minutes talking about very, very important topics in these current times. Very immensely knowledgeable panel that have a very deep understanding of the situation and what each person must be doing. So we heard from Dr. Reddy about what's happening in the world of vaccines, which is a lot of positive optimism from him, which is what we want to hear from them. And then as pediatricians, as a family medicine doctor, you guys offered what we must be doing as parents to address the situation with respect to the most important aspect of our lives, which is our kids, because the future belongs to them, as we all know. I think these points are very, very important, very, very informative for everybody. I'm sure the audience will appreciate the information that's
Three take-home
presented
messages I
here.
will give it to
Yes.
the audience. Three take-home messages. One is, please vaccinate regularly. Don't stop it. Follow your chronic diseases schedule as per your schedule. Don't stop it. And three is, maintain your quarantine environment more child-friendly. These three take-home messages from our
Dr. Sarah, do you
side.
have anything to conclude as well?
Yeah, obviously the vaccines, we've touched on that already. I would say, number two is talk to your children about this and think about their developmental level when you do talk, but just start that open and honest dialogue with them. I think they can be helped by hearing your thoughts, hearing you acknowledge the ways in which you do struggle, but also maintaining a calm and generally positive attitude about the changes that we're currently experiencing. And then I think my third one, as we were talking about these different symptoms, was just to say that the one take-home point I would make is, if there's any symptom that you think maybe could be COVID, just stay home while you wait and see whether, if your throat is just a little bit scratchy, and usually you would just go around go about your business. But we know that COVID starts slowly. It's not like you wake up and you feel awful one day. So while you're waiting to see if this turns into anything, or if you just didn't get enough sleep last night, just stay home and quarantine yourself and act as if this is COVID until you find out that it's not. That'll just help us keep all of our communities safer.
That's awesome. Sharmila, do you have any conclusive points, please?
Yeah, one thing is, yes, go back to your vaccinations. You should get that. And the other thing is keep, I mean, most of the times parenting is about teaching kids is what people think. But then I always held this view that you have to allow the kid to talk more, and then you will know how to parent your child. You have to take inputs always from your children. Let them talk. Let them tell you what they're feeling, how they're feeling. And you will be surprised that you will learn a lot about how to be a parent. This is extremely important.
Tip, yeah.
Just let the conversation be. Even in the COVID times, it's about what they're feeling and what their actual problems are. Address them rather than always trying to tell them what to do and what not to do. Don't be so very uptight about things. Let the children talk. I will just tell you one comment that my teenager made. She said, if not for anything else, COVID definitely gave us the opportunity to tell our children or later that we have lived through something like this, which probably most of our adults also have never lived through as children. You are living through COVID as an adult, but mama, I'm living through this as a child. So this is how it is. There is positivity in everything, and they're learning and learn to see the bigger picture. I see a lot of parents complaining about online education being not perfect, or returning to schools early. See, in the entire life, it's about a 60-70 year life. This 1 year is not, you don't have to worry so much about this one particular year. In fact, it's not always the formal education at school that is needed for you to lead a good life. You're learning a lot of life skills and how to face adversity in this particular 1 year. Your child is learning more than all the years put together, believe me. And don't be in a hurry in pressurizing or forming forums to go back to school earlier and thing. You should leave it to the experts to decide. Whatever the government and the medical experts in conjunction decide, that's what. And be more compassionate towards the teachers who are, there are a lot of complaints that we are receiving about the teachers not being able to manage the online classes. You should give them that, you should be compassionate towards the teachers who are also doing it for the first time, who are figuring out just like all of us are doing. And sadly, there are teachers, there are parents who are opposing about paying the school because it's not a formal school training. But then how do the schools pay their teachers, particularly the medium income group schools, not the high-end ones,
none of that has
who are
changed.
struggling. I've seen reports of most of the schools closing down because they're not able to manage their teachers and recruit them. And the teachers are also in the lurch. So be more compassionate. At the end, COVID is all about caring for others. And unless you care for your neighbors or for the world around you, you're not going to be safe or happy. This is the message that the virus taught us. So please put it into practice.
That's awesome. Thank you. And great points. And thank you for your wonderful time and amazing knowledge that you all have shared today. Again, let's, as a team, let's clap for this wonderful community that is serving humanity right now like never before. You all be safe. Thank you, and thank you for all the viewers for spending your time in watching this wonderful panel discussion today. Hope you guys take away wonderful advice that the doctors have given us, and go ahead and implement those in our lives. And also, please do share this information if you feel this is useful for other people as well. Thank you again. We will meet in another B+ program pretty soon. Thank you.
For all the B+ viewers, I am available always on the telephone. Please be with me or take an advice from me. I can guide you for whatever it is. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.